Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshunamilitan Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Pravajantam Manupeta Apeta Krityam Dvapayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tan Maitaya Tadavo Vinedus Tam Sarvabhutam Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudidayat Bhaktya Vihina Parada Lakshay Kiptastika Mari Tarangamadye Kripa Mai Tvam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanara Vindam Tavevasmi Najivami Tvaya Vina Yati Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, we're going to continue hearing the beautiful Sri Bhajan Rahasya by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And we begin by offering our most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padma Nityalila Bhavishta, Om Vishnu Pada Sto Tatsat Sri Srimad Abhaya Charnaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada, and unto Sri Guru Pada Padma Nityalila Bhavishta, Om Vishnu Pada Asto Tatsat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, unto our exalted Rupanuga Varga, the assembled Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, headed by Sannyasigan. And today happens to be the appearance of one of the disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, Sri Srimad Bhakti Kumud Santa Goswami Maharaj, whom I don't know much about. I should know. But I know that he was very principled, because a lot of articles in the Rays of the Harmonist are by him. So he was a writer, he was a preacher. I can't remember his name before, but we definitely recognize him in the past times. He's a very active and energetic preacher. I think he's one that came at a very young age as well. In any case, we offer our most humble obeisance and respect and honor towards him today. Very grateful for his contributions. So in text 30, Bhaktivinoda begins by explaining that relationship between Krishna on one side and the living entity and the material world on the other side is one of inconceivable difference and non-difference. Achintya Beda Beda. Beda Abeda. Right? Nevertheless, Krishna is separately situated in his eternal Sarup. And he quotes the 35th verse of the 9th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's see. Let's go to that. 35th verse. Oh, it's backing up. Yesterday we heard about the differences. Oh, there we are. Okay, this is the Yata Mahanti Bhutani Bhuteshu Javasheshvanu Bhavishtan Yabhavishtani Tatateshu Nateshvaham. The 5 great elements of material creation enter into the bodies of all living entities, high and low. From the demigods, did I read this yesterday? No. From the demigods to the subhuman species. But at the same time, these elements exist independently. Similarly, I have entered into all living entities as the supersoul, but at the same time, I am situated independently in my own Sarup, and I appear to my surrendered devotees both internally and externally. I know we talked about these principles because they were also discussed in relation to the previous verse. And I read it a few days ago. So, let's read Srila Prabhupada's translation. O Brahma, please know that the universal elements enter into the cosmos and at the same time do not enter into the cosmos. Similarly, I myself also exist within everything created, and at the same time I am outside of everything. Right, and he gives a very extensive purport. Let's hear what Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj says. He's not commenting in the same depth on these purports on these verses, because this is not an examination of the Bhagavatam in and of itself, but he's examining the principles of Tattva, Jiva Tattva, Bhagavan Tattva, Maya Tattva, Shakti Tattva, so that we can understand the nature of the holy name and our relationship with it and its role in our Anartha-Nivriti, which we're discussing at this point. So, Gurudev says, after discussing his own Sarup, Sri Bhagavan says, I am situated inside and outside every living entity. Bhagavan dwells in every living entity as the Supersoul, but not all living entities are able to perceive him. Well, that's a fact. I don't know anybody that's able to perceive him. Well, maybe a few people I know that perceive the Supersoul directly. We can learn to perceive him indirectly, though, by these descriptions, right? By the symptoms of Paramatma. So, not all living entities are able to perceive him. Only his devotees can realize him. Not only that, Bhagavan is present everywhere, in all places, and the devotees can also realize this. According to the gradation of their bhakti, devotees relish the existence of Bhagavan and the nectar of his sweetness and beauty. The affection of the devotees for Bhagavan is called prem, and this is prayojan tattva, the ultimate objective. The premi bhakta sees Sri Krishna everywhere, both within his heart and outside. This is the intrinsic characteristic of in other words, the Swarup Lakshana of prem, as described by Sri Krishna himself. This is in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 25, which would be Mahaprabhu's final instructions to Sanatana Goswami. There are 6 chapters, most amazing chapters. And this 25th chapter, well, they're all amazing. Anyway, he says, Bhakta ama preme bandi, yache hriday bitare, yahan netra paritahan dekaye amare. The devotees keep me bound in their hearts with the ropes of prem. And outside their hearts, they see only me wherever they look. Wow. Bhagavan resides affectionately in the hearts of the devotees, considering them his own. And he resides in the hearts of the other jivas in a detached way. Bhagavan is supremely independent, yet his quality of being controlled is that he resides in the hearts of devotees and has possessiveness, mamata, towards them. Bhagavan is made a prisoner by the loving devotion of his premi bhaktas. The essence of spiritual knowledge is prema bhakti, and the wonderful confidential secret of prema bhakti is that Bhagavan becomes controlled by his loving devotees. Not many months ago, we were discussing the Damodar Leela, Lord Damodar bound by the love of Mother Jashoda. And this theme was principal throughout. The idea that the great devotees, the genuine high-class premi devotees, they bond Krishna by ropes of affection. And even there's gradations, the degree to which the Lord is bound. In Vaikuntha, there's a relationship, certainly, and the Lord is appreciative of his devotees and bound to some extent, but not really controlled. Not really controlled by deep love. Because there's Aishvarya, there's the knowledge that this is my Lord, this is God, He's the, creator, maintainer, Lord of everything. They have this gyan, the jnani bhaktas. And that inhibits the quality of the love to some extent. Because in that kind of love, there can never be a sense of equality or deep affection and interdependence like you see in Braj. When you go to Ayodhya with Lord Ram, there's a much more intimacy. The qualities even of sweetness come forth because of the beauty of Lord Ram and his affection and protection for those under his rule. Right? But even more, we see Krishna in Mathura and Dwarka, much more sweet, because there the pastimes are much more human-like. And there are also gradations of love with greater intimacy. Even though even the queens know he's God, Arjuna, Bhima, Yudhishthir, they also know that he's God, but the influence of the mood of friendship, the influence of the mood that I'm his wife, comes into play. And even with Devaki and Vasudeva, sometimes their affection as mother and father sometimes slightly covers that awareness, right? When Krishna was born in the prison house, their praying was, he showed himself as God, fully, full form, 4 arms, all his ornaments, completely as God. But then their praying became so strong, they became fearful for him, right? Why would, they have to fear, Kamsa? This is God himself, right? And yet, the prem, love of devotees, it acts in marvelous ways in the heart. And they became fearful, and they prayed to make some solution so Kamsa won't come and kill you. They had seen him kill their other children, and they became afraid for him. So then he assumed his baby-like form, and Vasudeva took him across the river, and that's where the whole pastime took place, where that form merged into the original Swayam Bhagavan, the original form of Krishna, Nandanandan, Yashodanandan, and Vasudeva took back the daughter of Jashoda. Jashoda had given birth to both Krishna and Yogamaya. Right? And then the question arises, well, Vasudeva was a very righteous Kshatriya. How could he take this girl back knowing that she's probably going to be killed by Kamsa? That thought must have come into his mind. How could he do that? And generally, Kshatriya would not do that. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes this because of prem. His love was so strong that any other thought was pushed aside. And that's okay, because these are transcendental pastimes. And the Lord himself is overseeing those transformations. Yogamaya herself is overseeing these transformations. Prema is an extraordinary state, right? It can't be governed at all or limited at all by mundane morality, by mundane consideration. It can parallel, it can appear to be very similar, but it doesn't touch the mundane world in any way, right? And here in this last paragraph, he's saying that Bhagavan resides affectionately in the hearts of the devotees, considering them his own, quality of mamata. That means the realized devotees, they don't have Paramatma in the heart. They have Krishna in the heart. Paramatma is a neutral witness. He doesn't show affection, doesn't show attachment, detachment. He's just witnessing and awarding the results of your, the fruits of your labor, so to speak. He will act as an agent to, when that soul begins to pray and reach out to the Lord, that Paramatma will act as an agent to sometimes subtly encourage. And sometimes the idea of a conscience, a thought that you have coming out of nowhere, right, inspiring you in devotion. This Paramatma will act in that way, but generally he's neutral. In order to attract the Lord in the heart, in the form that we wish to experience love for him, we have to clean all the anarthas. And that goes to what we had also hear every year, is the Rath Yatra pastime. When Mahaprabhu, just prior to Lord Jagannath leaving the temple and going to Gundicha, Mahaprabhu takes all his devotees and they cleanse that temple. And that temple represents Vrindavan, but it also represents the heart of the devotee. That until the heart is completely free of all contamination, of all separate interest, right, all anya bilashita, and all jnana karma dhyanavartam, all the coverings of personally reward-seeking activity, impersonal knowledge, desire for name and fame and mundane knowledge, any interest separate from the Lord, until all those are cleansed, there's no anukulyena Krishna anushilanam, right? It does not happen. So Mahaprabhu taught that anarthas are cleansed in stages. In the beginning, when they cleansed the Gundicha temple, what did they take out? It had been abandoned for a year. So rocks, sticks, big chunky leaves, dirt, clumps of dirt, the gross things. That was all removed. Then they went and did a second cleaning, where small straws and more fine dirt. And then in even a finer cleaning, right? And they were throwing water on the walls, water on the ceiling, little spider webs, little tiny, tiny pieces of grain and sand. Everything was removed. And then the last thing on the altar and on the floor were stains from oil or other. If you've ever seen, even marble and fine stone granite can get stained by these things. And it doesn't come up just by washing with water. Mahaprabhu took his own cloth and rubbed and scrubbed until these things were removed. The most fine and subtle anarthas are there. And what's the most fine anartha we heard earlier in this chapter? Pratishtasha, right? That desire for fame, recognition, honor, respect. It pervades us. It pervades us. We try to cheat ourselves and others by hiding it, right? And actually, we may not even know we have it because we've got so many grosser anarthas. We're still distracted by the sticks and rocks and leaves, right? The finer anarthas. We haven't even come to that yet, haven't uncovered that. Sometimes when you look around, you can look at that guy, he's so proud. I'm not proud. You're proud saying that, right? A real devotee, he doesn't think that at all. He thinks, I am the most fallen. I have no good qualities. I am lower than Jagai and Madhai, right? Krishna's Kaviraj himself stated that throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita, such expressions of humility. And Mahaprabhu, until we come to that, Turnad api sunichena, Torod api suhishtana, amanina manadena, we can't kirtaneya sadahari. We won't be able to chant continually. And when he says chant, he means shudanam, not our chanting, not our grinding away, just thinking of this and that while our fingers move over the beads, pulling rope, pulling beads. No, real chanting. So the Lord, until we cleanse these anarthas, he can't or won't come into the heart because he's only controlled by love. But at one point he will. It says he's independent, supremely independent, yet his quality of being controlled is that he resides in the hearts of devotees and has possessiveness, mamata, towards them. Possessiveness is an affection, it's one of the symptoms of love. It's generally the symptom that when you come into dasya ras, then mamata begins to emerge. Deep attachment, thinking, this is my Krishna, and this is my service. We get some reflections of that, like in our own service, like sometimes people that take care of gardens or Tulsi or the kitchen, and they're very fierce about how things should be done. That's the awakening of mamata. I want everything clean, right? I want everything timely. I want everybody on time, right? All these things, that if you don't think those are important, there's not even a scent of mamata yet. We develop our mamata in relationship with our service. and our relationship with others. We want ourselves to be up to that standard, and we want to associate with others that encourage that standard, right? And so we try to create an environment that is up to this standard, not making excuse for the lower standard. That's not what we want. That's not bhakti. That's not kindness. That's not mercy, right? That's what they call in the material world. What is that when somebody, that you got a couple, right? Or codependence, right? Where you're enabling all the problems of another person. They've got all these problems, all these things going on, and like you got some disobedient child, and the mother, oh, my boy would never do that. Oh, yeah, he's a good boy, and they never discipline them, never correct them, right? That's not actually real love, right? That's just blinders on your face, and you're not really fulfilling the role of a parent because you're not helping your child become the best that they can be. Real parent means discipline. Real disciple means discipline. When one enters into an ashram or a mat, you're putting yourself in that role of disciple. Now, there may be many different gurus, but the individual mentality is now I'm a disciple, which means I'm accepting the discipline, the regulation, the duties of an ashram person. And if you develop that, then anartha goes away, and then Krishna will say, oh, this person, they really want to be my devotee. I'm going to help them, and one day they'll come into your heart. Bhagavan is made a prisoner by the loving devotion of his premi bhaktas. The essence of spiritual knowledge is prema bhakti. And the wonderful confidential secret of prema bhakti is that Bhagavan becomes controlled by his loving devotees. That's extraordinary. We're always trying to control others, but the mentality of the devotee is to control by love. Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj, when he came to the West, one of his major instructions to we from the West and to anyone, we had been in our own spiritual institutions, but he wanted us to mature in our relationships. And so he's always saying, that he would mostly observe that people would run spiritual institutions with, hierarchy and with moods of, control. I want to control you. You must do this, you must do that. I am the authority, you must listen to me. Right? But he said the real control is control by love. He said, I don't have to ask anybody for anything. They have so much affection that they'll automatically respond. But sometimes Guru will chastise. But that chastisement, in that instance, again, it goes back to affection. That this anartha is there, it has to be pointed out, has to be removed. It's for your benefit. Controlling by love is in that mood. The other kind of control is I just want to bend you to my will for my own purposes under the guise of bhakti. That's a very immature stage. So to go back to the first part of this purport, we heard earlier Bhagavan describing his own swarup, and he said, I am situated inside and outside every living entity. Bhagavan dwells in every living entity as the supersoul, but not all living entities are able to perceive him. Only his devotees can realize him. And not only that, Bhagavan is present everywhere, in all places, and the devotees can also realize this. And then this statement, according to the gradation of their bhakti, devotees relish the existence of Bhagavan and the nectar of his sweetness and beauty. And I was just listening to one chapter in the, the Bhakti Rasayan, where Srila Narayan Maharaj is quoting verses that Sri Sanatana Goswami put at the end of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, verses from the Bhagavatam. And these were special verses that Parikshit Maharaj had spoken to his mother Uttara to explain to her the essence of the instruction he had received from Shukadev Goswami. She was also there, but and tens of thousands of sages were also there. But the sages were of all different categories. Some were yogis, some were karmakandis, some were jnanis, right? All different qualification. Not all, maybe just a few, had the qualification like Parikshit Maharaj to understand the deepest essence of what Srila Shukadev Goswami was giving. So a lot of the verses are spoken in a covered way. And it's only when you read the purports and the real deeper analysis and multiple meanings of these words that you can understand the deeper meaning that Shukadev Goswami was presenting, that the idea of Radha, Prem, where, many people think that our goal, we want to go to Goloka Vrindavan, we want to be with Krishna, we want to obtain Krishna. That's an incomplete way of understanding. What we want is Krishna Prem. We want the Prem of Krishna's devotees. What is it? Srimad Bhagavatam, or the Srimad Bhagavatam, Pramanam. Start me off at the beginning of this verse. The verse that Gurudev says, if you don't know this verse, you're not my disciple. Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas Tadama Vrindavanam, right? That Ramya Kached Upasana Brajavadu Vargena Jakalpita Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Prema Pumarto Mahan. You know what I'm going to need? I'm going to need to get some sidekick. Even Bhakti Bhagan Keshav, she had Srila Vamaraj, Srila Gurudev said that he wouldn't quote many verses. He'd just point to him, bring up the verse, and he'd quote strings of verses, right? Anyway, the object of our worship is Krishna. Which Krishna? Vrajesha Tanaya, the son of the king of Vrindavan, right? And the highest form of worship, the topmost upasana, is that exhibited by the gopis, the Brajavadu, the wives, the young married gopis in Vrindavan. How do we know this? Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless evidence for this. And Krishna Prem is the ultimate goal. And this is the opinion of Mahaprabhu, and we don't care for any other opinion. This is like one of our Mula shlokas, written by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Yeah. And if you don't know it, you're not Gurudev's disciple. And if you knew it, but you forget it sometimes, what does that mean? Oh, God. I forget so much. Anyway, so this upasana, again, upasana means you can't really do upasana. Upasana means really fixed meditation on Krishna. When you enter into bhav, when you begin to first start into that state, you can maybe come to mantra upasana, where you hear a shloka, and that pastime will come into your heart. At this point, we're still supposed to remember pastimes and shlokas and try to meditate on the pastimes, but not in our own creative way, but as we've heard them from others. From our acharyas. Oh, how did Srila Prabhupada describe this in Krishna book? How does Gurudev tell this story? And one pastime at a time we're focusing on. At one point, that pastime will manifest itself spontaneously in the heart, and you'll actually see it. And you'll see Krishna, and you'll see his friends, and all these wonderful things. And then when you come to an even higher stage, Sarasiki Upasana, where the pastimes come into your heart like an unending reel, like a movie reel, just one after the other, spontaneously, and there's no control of it, right? But that comes as you grow. Again, mentioning what I had been hearing him say, and Bhakti Sridhar Maharaj said this also. He said that the way when you hear a verse or concept, when you're a Kanishta devotee, you'll understand it in one way. And of course, there's many gradations of Kanishta. I mean, I remember when I was a brand new devotee reading that Brahma Samhita that was published by the Gaudiya Math. And it was completely incomprehensible. I didn't even know the English meaning of half the words they were using, right? I just became absolutely bewildered and said, what the heck? What is this? And there was one other devotee who had been around a while, and he was kind of a scholar, and he knew the English meaning of the words, but he didn't really understand it in any deeper way, but he had more appreciation than me, right? More appreciation than me. And then as you grow, as you practice, and as you read and read and read, then you develop a broader intellectual base, right? And much more of this fits in and makes sense. And that, what is the result of that? Your faith increases. That is the beginning of real transcendental faith. Before that, your faith is just lokic, it's ordinary, like people have in ordinary religions. They have faith in many religions that have no real foundation. Like, not to, disparage anybody, because you respect religions according to the degree of alignment with the Vedic version. But something like the Book of Mormon, where did that come from? It came from some say, the mushroom experiences of that guy. What was his name? Not John Smith. John Smith was the guy who took it. Anyway, I'll come to me anyway. And it's got so many imaginary things that, just where'd it come from? Scientology. The guy who founded that, his name was L. Ron Hubbard. He was a great science fiction writer. He wrote some amazing books, some of them that thick. What was it, Battle Earth or something? They made a crummy movie about it years ago. Anyway, then he said, writing is in that the real money is in religion. So he decided to start his own religion. And he wrote it in such a way to make it attractive to people that were seeking name and fame and respect and honor. And he thought that if I can he particularly targeted Hollywood types, actors and actresses, because they're generally not very intelligent. They have strong memories, and they're generally emotionally afflicted. They're controlled by emotions, but they're not generally very deep. That's not all of them, but most of them, right? Shudra, actors are Shudras. That's just what it is, they can memorize lines, but they're some of the dumbest people when it comes to actually understanding how to analyze the world and reality. So there's all different levels of religion, and people that have faith in these simplistic religions, it's a start, it's something. But when you begin to study Vedic literature, then, and develop faith in that is real faith. What is it called? Shastriya Shraddha. That's when your faith becomes grounded in transcendental reality. And as you move through Kanishta, you actually experience it becomes stronger, and some relish and happiness comes in that state. That's not to be denied, that's to be encouraged. But when the anartas begin to become cleansed to a greater degree, and you're pushing aside the compulsions to perform activities which are not bhakti, and you try to always be absorbed and talk about Krishna, remembering Krishna, serving Krishna, and not all the other things, then you may move into nishta, which is no small thing, because nishta is actually the gateway into madhyam, right? Where your faith is strong enough that you're always engaged. When Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj was empowering his sannyasis to take sannyas, there was, to give initiation, there was kind of an uproar, because just like Srila Prabhupada before him, he had mostly stressed that to be guru, he should be a Mahabhagavat, right? But Srila Prabhupada also, madhyam, makes you qualified to be a guru. because you have something you can give then. You have something that can lift somebody out of ignorance and establish genuine faith in bhakti, right? Because the Madhyam faith is very strong. And it begins with Nishtha, actually, that position. And I was in a room one time with him, and another sannyasi, Padmanabh Maharaj, was there, and two of his, they were younger devotees. They're not younger now they're very senior, maybe in their mid to later 50s, yeah. And, very active. They were very active at that time, but they could not accommodate this idea of Guru not being a Mahabhagavat. But Gurudev, you've always said that you have to be a Mahabhagavat. And he said, no, Madhyam is okay. And Srila Prabhupada talks about that in the Nectar of Instruction. And so they said, but even Madhyam is very high, very rare. And he said, oh, there may be so many Madhyams. And he pointed to me. He is Madhyam. And I looked at Gurudev and I laughed. I said, Gurudev, I'm not Madhyam. I know what Madhyam is. I'm not Madhyam. And he said, oh, but you are acting on the platform of Madhyam. And so that is also Madhyam, which meant that you're fully engaged, right? At least then I was, because I was really busy and surrounded by devotees, so they kept me honest, But he made that point, and that helped me recall what Srila Prabhupada said. Sometimes he referred to his own disciples. He said, all my disciples are pure devotees. Bhaktivinoda Thakur uses the word Shuddha Bhakta for one who has come into Madhyam. We used to think that it only meant Mahabhagavat, topmost platform, right? Uttamadhikari. But he said Shuddha Bhaktas are in the Madhyam platform because they are fully dedicated to the service of Krishna, either by nishtha, by strong intelligence and fixed determination, or they've actually moved into ruchi and they're chanting Shuddha Nam, which is extraordinarily powerful, right? So that's what he's saying, that devotees relish the existence of Bhagavan and the nectar of his sweetness and beauty according to the degradation of their bhakti. But it's accessible even in the very beginning. That's why people become devotees. When your bhakti sukriti reaches a certain point, then you'll decide, oh, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. I want to be a devotee. And that's why it's so interesting that, you go out on Harinam, you distribute books, and you see thousands of people. But all of a sudden, among them, there's one person, they read the book. Wow, this makes total sense. Everybody else reads the book, and okay, that's interesting. And they put it aside, and they're developing some sukriti, something's building up. But some people have developed enough that as soon as they read it, this is the absolute truth. And the more they read it, the more the practice, the more that's reinforced. And some people join, and they come from very diverse backgrounds. You think, how could that person ever be a devotee? But very quickly, they make extraordinary advancement. And they're very fixed in their determination. They work very hard. They're very humble. They have a service attitude. That's the real key, when people manifest humility and service attitude. Because in the material world, it's all about us. What are you going to do for me? What are you giving me? What do I get out of it, right? But when you push that away and begin to develop that humble mood, again, Turnadapi Sunichena Taro Api Suhishnana. What's the next one? Amanina Manadena. Not seeking any praise and reward and honor and service for myself, but offering it to others. That's when real bhakti begins to manifest and show. So, Krishna himself says in 11th canto, one who says he's my devotee, not so much, but one who says he's the devotee of my devotee, he's my real devotee. When Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada was traveling in South India, tell this story time to time, it's always relevant. They came to this place, I can't remember where it was, but South India has, many strict followers in the Sri Sampradaya, in the Madhva Sampradaya. The whole Varnashram wasn't completely destroyed in South India. The Muslims were not so effective that far down. So there are many people practicing very strictly. And there's this one person who is renowned as a great devotee of Krishna, or Ram, I can't remember. At any rate, I think it was Krishna, yeah. And so they said, oh, you must visit him, you must visit him. So they went, and they talked with him, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada had a long talk, polite, and the man was exhibiting great learning, quoting shlokas, this and that, and everyone was amazed how learned he was. And he seemed very clean, very gentle, very pucka, because there are some very pucka personalities down there, you know, not to be completely disregarded by any means. But then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada asked him, under whose guidance do you serve Krishna? And he said, oh no, I am serving directly. I am not under any guidance. And they ended the discussion shortly after that, and they left. And the disciples saying, oh, what did you think of him? Because externally it's very impressive. He said, oh, he's bogus, completely bogus. He says, why? Because nobody serves Krishna directly. Everybody serves under guidance. You can't reach Krishna except through Radharani. You can't reach Radharani except through Srimati Lalita, Srimati Vishaka, the Astasakis, and then all the other 360 different kinds of group leaders. And all of them are serving Krishna with very specific moods. And within those groups, there are also hierarchies and levels. And Mahaprabhu himself said, Gopi Bhartura Pada Kamalayor Dasa Dasanadas. I am the servant of the servant of the... I want to be. He says, I want to be the servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis. Right? And to serve that Krishna who's Gopi Bhartura, which means one who's actually controlled by the love of the gopis. So if you want to be with Krishna, who's controlled by that love, you want to serve those who control him with that love. That's what this is. That's what Krishna's saying. I'm everywhere and I'm independent. If you want to be with him in his original form, this is what we're hearing. You know, all the obstacles, all the mundane conceptions of what's proper, what's right, what's success, you know, got to get rid of them. Got to get rid of them. So we'll stop here and we'll do the next verse tomorrow. And we offer our intense gratitude to Srila Prabhupada, to Srila Gurudev, who have so kindly made all this available to us, to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, our great grand spiritual master, preceptor, seventh Goswami, and to all the Assembled Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, and to Bhakti Kumuda Shanta Goswami Maharaj, whose appearance day is today. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.